Seattle rain drummed against my office window as I stared at the blueprints spread across my desk. The Morgan Building project was due in 3 days, but my mind wasn't on work. It kept drifting to Kelly's words from last night, words that still rang in my ears like an alarm I couldn't shut off. Lucas, I invited Carter to our wedding. If you love me, you'll understand. Carter, her ex-boyfriend, the man she dated for 5 years before me, the man whose name she still sometimes whispered in her sleep. I'd met Kelly Hart 2 years ago at a charity gala for the Seattle Children's Hospital. I was there representing my architecture firm, which had donated the design for their new wing. She was the interior designer working on the project. When she walked in wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes, I couldn't look away. 3 drinks later, I had her number. A week after that, we had our first date at Canlis, overlooking Lake Union. By our 3rd date, I knew she was the one. I should have known perfection comes with fine print. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Thinking of you. Can't wait to be Mrs. Reed in 29 days. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. What could I say? That I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to shake the image of her and Carter laughing together at our wedding? That her request felt like a knife between my ribs, twisted by her casual delivery? Instead, I typed, can't wait either. Love you. My assistant Devin knocked on my door. Mr. Reed, the Johnsons are here for their 2 o'clock. I nodded, shoving thoughts of Kelly and Carter into the back of my mind. I had clients to impress, a career to maintain. My personal problems would have to wait, but they didn't wait. Throughout the meeting, as the Johnsons debated between modern and traditional designs for their lake house, all I could think about was why Kelly would want her ex at our wedding. What was she not telling me? Mr. Reed, what do you think? Mrs. Johnson's voice pulled me back. I cleared my throat, adjusting my tie. I think sometimes traditions exist for a reason. They've stood the test of time because they work. But there's also something to be said for breaking from convention, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons. Mr. Johnson nodded enthusiastically. Exactly what I've been trying to tell her. A blend of both is what we need. They left satisfied, and I sat back in my chair, loosening my tie. I was giving architectural advice, but I might as well have been talking about my own situation. What was the right reason for inviting an ex to your wedding? Was there one? That evening I drove home to the condo Kelly and I had bought 6 months ago in Queen Anne. It was a restored Craftsman with a view of the Space Needle that cost more than I'd wanted to spend, but Kelly had fallen in love with it. I'd fallen in love with her excitement. That seemed to be our pattern. The sky had darkened to a deep indigo, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars against the backdrop of a storm-threatening sky. Traffic crawled along the rain-slicked streets, giving me too much time with my thoughts. By the time I pulled into our reserved parking spot, I'd rehearsed a dozen versions of the conversation we needed to have. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up with a smile that used to make my heart race. Now it just made me wonder what else she was hiding behind it. How was your day? She asked, setting down her knife to kiss me. Fine, I said, accepting her kiss but not deepening it. The Johnsons finally agreed on a design concept. That's great, she returned to her chopping. I had lunch with Madison today. She said the bridesmaid dresses came in. They're perfect. I nodded, pouring myself a whiskey from the bar cart. Did you tell her about your special guest edition? Kelly's knife paused mid-chop. Are you still upset about that? I'm not upset. The lie tasted bitter. I'm confused. Why is it so important to have him there? She sighed, setting down the knife again. Lucas, Carter and I have history, but it's just that. History. We've both moved on. He's married. I'm marrying you. We're just friends now. Friends who never mentioned each other in the 2 years we've been together? Friends you never thought to introduce me to or invite to dinner? Those kinds of friends? We lost touch for a while, she said, her voice tight. We reconnected recently through LinkedIn. He's in tech now, doing really well. His wife, Emily, is lovely. I thought it would be nice to have them there to celebrate with us. LinkedIn, I repeated, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. And when exactly did this professional reconnection happen? She turned back to her chopping, her shoulders tense. A few months ago. Does it matter? It matters that you didn't mention it until now. It matters that you've already invited him without discussing it with me first. I didn't think it would be a big deal. Her knife came down hard on a carrot. I didn't realize you were the jealous type, Lucas. This isn't about jealousy, I said, even though part of it was. This is about respect, about making decisions together for our wedding. She turned to face me, her blue eyes flashing. Fine. I'm telling you now. Carter and Emily Daniels are coming to our wedding. If you love me, you'll be okay with this. There it was again, the emotional trap. If you love me, as if my love was being measured by my willingness to accept whatever she wanted. I do love you, Kelly. That's why I proposed. That's why I'm standing here having this conversation instead of just walking away. But love isn't a blank check you get to cash for whatever you want. Her expression softened, and she came around the counter to wrap her arms around my waist. You're right. I'm sorry I didn't discuss it with you first. It's our wedding, not just mine. I held her, breathing in her familiar scent of jasmine and vanilla. I wanted to believe her, to believe this was just a miscommunication, not a sign of something deeper. Tell me honestly, I said into her hair, is there anything I should know about you and Carter? Any reason I should be concerned? She pulled back, looking up at me with clear eyes. No, Lucas. Carter is my past. You're my future, I promise. I nodded, wanting to believe her. We finished making dinner together, the tension gradually easing as we fell back into our routine. We ate on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of pink and gold. By the time we went to bed, the argument felt distant, unimportant. But at 3 a.m, I woke to the soft glow of a phone screen. Kelly was sitting up in bed, texting someone, a small smile on her face. When she noticed me stirring, she quickly locked her phone and set it down. Sorry, she whispered. Didn't mean to wake you. Madison had a question about the flowers. At 3 a.m, I asked, my voice rough with sleep. She's having insomnia, wedding stress. Kelly leaned over to kiss my forehead. Go back to sleep, babe. I closed my eyes but didn't sleep. I listened to Kelly's breathing, waiting for it to deepen into sleep before I carefully reached for her phone on the nightstand. It was locked, of course, with a fingerprint sensor. I'd never tried to access Kelly's phone before. We trusted each other. Or I had trusted her until now. I put the phone back and lay awake until dawn, a hollowness spreading in my chest. This wasn't me. I wasn't the type of man who checked his fiance's phone or questioned her late-night texts. But I also wasn't the type of man who ignored the warning signs when something felt wrong. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. During my lunch break, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, looking up Carter Daniels on social media. It wasn't hard to find him. He was a product manager at Amazon with a public Instagram account full of hiking photos, tech conferences, and smiling selfies with a pretty brunette I assumed was Emily, his wife. His most recent post made my blood run cold. It was a picture of a whiskey glass on a bar top with the caption, "Counting the days until I see you again. Some reunions are worth the wait." It was posted 2 days ago, right around the time Kelly had told me about inviting him to the wedding. The comments were off, but there were several likes, including one from Kelly's account. I scrolled through his feed, looking for more connections to Kelly, but found nothing obvious. Still, that one post and her like were enough to feed my growing suspicion. I switched to Emily's profile, which was linked in Carter's bio. Her account was also public, filled with photos of their life together, their house in Bellevue, their golden retriever, her work as a nurse at Northwest Hospital, the same hospital where my mother had been, treated for cancer last year. I'd spent months in that hospital, yet I'd never met or heard of an Emily Daniels. It was a large hospital, of course, but the coincidence felt significant somehow. A knock on my door startled me. It was my business partner, Jared, wanting to discuss a potential new client. I minimized the browser window, but my mind stayed on Carter and Emily and the web of connections I was just beginning to unravel. "You okay, man?" Jared asked as he was leaving. "You seem distracted." "Just wedding stress," I said, forcing a smile. 29 days and counting. "Cold feet," he joked. "No," I said too quickly. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. The more I dug, the more questions I had. Why now? Why was Kelly suddenly so insistent on having Carter at our wedding? And why did it feel like there was more to this story than she was telling me? That evening, when I got home, Kelly was out with her bridesmaids. She'd left a note saying they were doing final fittings and would probably get dinner after, so not to wait up. The empty apartment gave me space to think, to plan my next move. I wandered through our home, seeing it with new eyes. The framed photos of us on the mantle, the throw pillows she'd insisted would pull the living room together, the expensive coffee maker she'd bought because life's too short for bad coffee. All these little touches that had turned my bachelor pad into our home now felt like props in a play I hadn't realized I was performing in. I could confront her with what I'd found, but what had I really found? A vague Instagram post? A like? It wasn't exactly smoking gun evidence. And if I was wrong, if this was all innocent, I'd damage her trust in me for nothing. No, I needed more information. I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I confronted anyone. I poured myself a whiskey and made a decision. I would reach out to Emily Daniels. If anyone had a right to know what was going on, it was her. If Carter and Kelly were reconnecting in a way that crossed lines, Emily deserved to know as much as I did. Finding her work email was easy enough. The hospital staff directory was public. I drafted and redrafted an email a dozen times before settling on something simple. Mrs. Daniels, you don't know me, but I believe we may have a mutual concern. My name is Lucas Reed, and I'm engaged to Kelly Hart, who used to date your husband, Carter. Recently, Kelly has insisted on inviting Carter to our wedding, and certain behaviors have made me suspicious of their renewed connection. If you've noticed anything concerning, I would appreciate a discreet conversation. Your insight might save us both from future heartache. Lucas Reed. I stared at the send button for a full 5 minutes before clicking it. There was no going back now. Either Emily would respond and confirm my suspicions, or she'd ignore me, perhaps warn Carter, who would tell Kelly, and I'd be exposed as a paranoid fiancé snooping into his past. It was a risk I had to take. 3 hours and 2 more whiskeys later, my phone pinged with an email notification. Mr. Reed, I've been wondering when someone would finally reach out. I've had my suspicions for months. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a coffee shop called Analog on 5th and Pine. I'll be there at noon, Emily Daniels. My stomach dropped. Her response confirmed my worst fears. There was something going on, something Emily had suspected for months. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I just felt sick. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to Kelly's steady breathing beside me, wondering how we'd gotten here, how the woman I loved enough to propose to could be hiding such secrets. When morning came, I told her I had a client meeting at lunch. She kissed me goodbye, reminding me we had a cake tasting at 6. I promised I wouldn't miss it, all while feeling like I was living someone else's life. The rain had given way to one of those rare, perfect Seattle mornings, the kind that makes you forget the city spends most of the year under a gray blanket. Mount Rainier was visible in the distance, its snow-capped peak gleaming against a cerulean sky. Such beauty felt almost offensive, given the turmoil inside me. Analog Coffee was crowded when I arrived, filled with the typical Seattle mix of tech workers and creative types hunched over laptops. The air was rich with the scent of freshly ground beans and the low hum of conversation. I spotted Emily immediately sitting in a corner booth, a medical ID badge still clipped to her jacket. She was prettier in person than in her photos, with intelligent eyes that assessed me as I approached. Lucas? She asked, extending a hand. I nodded, shaking her hand before sliding into the booth across from her. Emily, thank you for meeting me. I ordered you a coffee. She pushed a mug toward me. I wasn't sure how you'd take it, so... Black is fine, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. So, you said you've had suspicions for months? She nodded, her eyes dropping to her own mug. Carter started working late about 4 months ago. New project, he said. High priority. I believed him at first. He's always been ambitious, always chasing the next promotion. But then I noticed changes. He got a new cologne, started working out more, became protective of his phone. She looked up at me. Classic signs, right? I should know. I caught him cheating 3 years ago with a coworker. I'm sorry, I said genuinely. Did you confront him about these new changes? I tried. He denied everything. Said I was being paranoid because of what happened before. He promised he'd learned his lesson. She laughed bitterly. I wanted to believe him. We've been in therapy, working through the trust issues from last time. I thought we were making progress. But you don't think so anymore. 2 weeks ago, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a restaurant downtown. Leon's. Expensive. Place. The date was for a night he told me he was working late. When I asked him about it, he said it was a team dinner. But when I called Leon's pretending to be his assistant confirming a reservation, they said he'd only booked a table for 2. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. Did he mention Kelly's name? Not directly, but last weekend he was in the shower and his phone kept buzzing with texts. I looked. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. The messages were from Kay, all about how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait to see him again, how complicated everything was. I took screenshots and sent them to myself, then deleted the evidence from his phone. She pulled out her phone, found the screenshots, and handed it to me. I scrolled through them, each message like a punch to the gut. I can't stop thinking about last time. When can we meet again? Read one. I know it's complicated, but we'll figure it out. Some things are worth fighting for, read another. The contact was saved simply as K, but the blue bubble texts were undeniably iPhone messages, and Kelly had an iPhone. The timing lined up too perfectly to be coincidence. I'm sorry, Emily said softly, taking her phone back. I know this must be difficult to see. Does Carter know you know? I asked, my voice tight. She shook her head. No, I've been trying to decide what to do. Then your email came, and, well, it confirmed what I'd feared. That Kay is your Kelly. She invited him to our wedding, I said, still struggling to process everything. Said they'd reconnected professionally through LinkedIn, that they were just friends now. Emily's laugh was hollow. LinkedIn? That's a new one. Did she mention that they dated for 5 years and were engaged before he left her for me? That she tried to win him back for months after they broke up? My world tilted on its axis. Engaged? She told me they were just college sweethearts. That it was serious, but not that serious. They were 3 months from their wedding when he met me at a tech conference in Portland. We had a weekend fling that turned into more. He broke off his engagement with Kelly 2 weeks later. She took a sip of her coffee. I'm not proud of how we started. I didn't know he was engaged at first. By the time I found out, I was already falling for him. He said his relationship with Kelly was already over, in all but name. And now history's repeating itself, I said, the irony not lost on me. Except this time, Kelly's the one with someone else. Emily nodded. Maybe it's karma. Maybe they deserve each other. What about what we deserve? I asked, an edge creeping into my voice. Neither of us signed up for this. No, we didn't. Emily's eyes hardened. So what are we going to do about it? We spent the next hour formulating a plan. It wasn't about revenge, we told ourselves. It was about truth, about forcing the lies into the open where they couldn't survive. Emily had been invited to the wedding as Carter's +1, but she had no intention of attending, not as his date anyway. Your rehearsal dinner, she said as we were getting ready to leave. When is it? Next Friday at Silver Oak, I said. Perfect. I'll meet you there. She stood, gathering her things. You're sure you want to do this? It's not too late to back out, to pretend we never had this conversation. I thought about Kelly's smile, about the life we'd planned together, the house we'd bought, the future we'd envisioned. Then I thought about the lies, the late-night texts, the secrets. The foundation we'd built our relationship on was cracking, and no amount of willful ignorance would repair it. I'm sure, I said, standing to face her. I need to know the truth, whatever it is. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Next Friday, then. As I walked back to the office, the city seemed different. The buildings loomed taller, the crowds moved faster, the noise was sharper. Everything was the same, yet everything had changed. I'd crossed a line, set in motion events that couldn't be undone, and strangely, despite the pain and uncertainty ahead, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The truth, however ugly, was preferable to the beautiful lie I'd been living. I made it to the cake tasting by 6, plastering on a smile as Kelly fed me bites of chocolate ganache and lemon curd. The bakery was a trendy place in Capitol Hill with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs dangling from the ceiling. Kelly was radiant with excitement, chattering about flower arrangements and seating charts. I nodded and smiled in all the right places, playing the role of eager groom while inside, I was hollow. "What about this one?" she asked, offering a forkful of red velvet cake. "Too sweet?" I took the bite, the flavors lost on me. "It's good." "Just good?" She raised an eyebrow. "Lucas Reed, this is our wedding cake. It has to be perfect." "Then you decide," I said, forcing a smile. "You've always had better taste than me." She beamed, pleased with the compliment. "That's true. Remember that awful couch you had when we met?" "It was comfortable," I defended, falling into our familiar banter despite everything. "It was hideous," and she laughed. "Thank God I came along when I did." "Yes," I thought, but didn't say. "Thank God you came along to save me from my terrible furniture choices, only to break my heart 2 years later." That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was making a mistake. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe I was overreacting to a few suspicious texts and circumstances. But deep down, I knew. The Kelly I thought I knew wouldn't have hidden her engagement to Carter. Wouldn't have insisted on inviting her ex to our wedding. Wouldn't be texting him at 3 a.m. The week before the rehearsal dinner crawled by in a blur of work commitments and wedding preparations. Kelly and I moved around each other like dancers following a familiar routine, but the music had changed, and only I seemed to notice. She was too caught up in wedding details to sense my withdrawal, or if she did, she attributed it to normal pre-wedding jitters. On Wednesday, 2 days before the rehearsal dinner, I came home early from work with a splitting headache. The condo was quiet. Kelly wasn't due back for hours. I took some aspirin and was about to lie down when I heard her voice coming from our bedroom. I froze, then moved silently down the hallway. The bedroom door was ajar, and through the crack I could see Kelly pacing, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice pitched low. I know, she was saying. "It's complicated, but I've got it all under control. Just follow my lead on Friday, okay?" A pause, then a soft laugh. "I miss you too. It won't be much longer." I retreated silently down the hall, her words confirming what I already knew. Friday's confrontation couldn't come soon enough. When the day finally arrived, I told Kelly I had to work late, but would meet her at the restaurant. She frowned, reminding me how important this night was, but didn't push when I promised I wouldn't be late. Just delayed. I texted Emily. "Still on for tonight?" Her response came quickly. "Yes, meeting you at 7:30 outside the restaurant." The day passed in a haze. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything but the evening ahead. By the time I left the office, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. I drove to the restaurant in a daze, rehearsing what I would say, how I would react when the truth finally came out. Silver Oak was one of Seattle's finest restaurants, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Puget Sound. The interior was all dark wood and soft lighting, with white tablecloths and crystal glasses that caught and refracted the light like liquid stars. As I approached, I saw Emily waiting under the awning, wearing a sleek black dress that hugged her curves. Her dark hair was swept up elegantly, and for a moment, I was struck by her beauty. In another life, under different circumstances, I might have found myself drawn to her. "You look nice," I said as I reached her. "So do you." She straightened my tie, a surprisingly intimate gesture from someone I barely knew. "Ready for this?" I took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling my lungs. In the distance, a ferry's horn sounded, low and mournful. As I'll ever be. Inside, the private dining room was already filled with our closest friends and family. Kelly's parents, my parents, our wedding party, and a few select others. About 30 people in all. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter, the atmosphere warm and celebratory. Kelly was at the head of the table, radiant in a champagne-colored dress, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders. Beside her sat Carter, looking exactly like his Instagram photos, tall with dark hair and the confident air of someone used to getting what he wanted. The room hushed as Emily and I entered. Kelly's smile froze, her eyes darting between us in confusion. Carter's reaction was more dramatic, his face drained of color, and he half rose from his seat before settling back down, his knuckles white around his wine glass. Sorry we're late, I announced to the room, my arm guiding Emily forward. Everyone, this is Emily. She was kind enough to be my +1 tonight. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the room. Kelly stood, her smile tight. Lucas, what's going on? Who is... Emily Daniels, I supplied. Carter's wife. I thought it was only fair she be here tonight, since her husband was invited to our wedding. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Every eye in the room was on us, a tableau of frozen expressions ranging from shock to horror to morbid fascination. Carter was on his feet now. Emily, this isn't... Sit down, Carter, Emily said, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. You've done enough talking. It's my turn now. Kelly looked between them, her face a mask of shock that I couldn't tell was genuine or performative. I don't understand. You're married, Carter? It was a good act. I had to give her that. The trembling lip, the wounded eyes. She'd almost convinced me she didn't know, if not for the texts I'd seen, the late-night conversations, the plans they'd made. Don't, I said quietly. Don't pretend you didn't know. Her eyes snapped to mine, the hurt morphing into something harder. Lucas, what are you talking about? I think it's time for some honesty, don't you? I looked around the room at our guests, all frozen in their seats, watching the drama unfold like a car crash they couldn't look away from. I apologize for the theatrics, everyone, but it seems my fiancée and her ex have been rekindling their old flame behind our backs. Gasps and whispers erupted. Kelly's mother covered her mouth. My father shifted uncomfortably. Madison, Kelly's maid of honor, looked everywhere but at Kelly. That's not true, Kelly said, her voice rising. Carter and I are just friends. Tell them, Carter. But Carter said nothing, his eyes fixed on Emily, who was now opening her phone. Friends don't text like this, Emily said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. She began to read from her phone. I can't stop thinking about last time. When can we meet again? She looked up at Kelly. That's from my husband's phone, to someone saved as K. Would you like to hear more, or should I just pass my phone around? This is private, Carter finally spoke, his voice tight. Whatever you think you know. I know enough, Emily cut him off. I know about the dinner at Leon's. I know about the hotel room afterward. I know about the plans you've been making. The room collectively gasped. Kelly's father stood up, his face thunderous. Her mother began to cry softly. Kelly's face had gone from shock to ashen. She turned to me, tears welling in her eyes. Lucas, please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Explain to me why you've been lying. Why you insisted on inviting your ex-fiancé to our wedding without telling me about your history. Why you've been texting him at 3 a.m. Ex-fiancé, someone whispered loudly. More murmurs swept through the room. Her tears spilled over now. I made a mistake, okay? I was confused. Carter reached out to me a few months ago, said he wanted closure, that he regretted how things ended between us. We met for coffee, just to talk. But then one thing led to another, I supplied. A tale as old as time. I was going to end it, she insisted, looking around at the room full of shocked faces. After the wedding, I just needed to know for sure. I needed to be certain I was making the right choice. By sleeping with him, Emily asked, her voice sharp. By planning your future with him while engaged to Lucas? Kelly's mother let out a soft wail. Her father put his arm around her, his face a mask of disgust as he looked at his daughter. Carter finally stepped forward, his face a mask of practiced concern. This has gone far enough. Kelly, I think we should... You don't get to tell her what to do anymore, I said, stepping between them. You don't get to have both women playing them against each other while you decide which one you want. This is insane, Carter said, looking around the room as if for support. You're making a scene over nothing. Kelly and I reconnected, yes, but it was innocent. These two are blowing everything out of proportion. Emily laughed, the sound brittle. Innocent? Is that why you booked a hotel room after dinner at Leon's? Is that why you've been working late 3 nights a week for months? Is that why you changed your cologne and got a new wardrobe? For innocent reconnection? The waiter who had been about to enter with a tray of appetizers took one look at the scene and silently backed out. Kelly's father stood up, his face grim. I think that's enough. Kelly, get your things. We're leaving. No, Kelly said, surprising everyone. No, I need to fix this. She turned to me, reaching for my hands, which I kept firmly at my sides. Lucas, please, I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in the past, in what ifs and might have beens, but I love you. You're the one I want to marry. Carter was just closure. Closure, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Is that what you call it? I think we should all calm down, Carter said, his composure cracking as he glanced at Emily. Em, can we talk privately? This doesn't have to end our marriage. We can work through this, like last time. Last time? Kelly's head whipped toward him. What does she mean, like last time? Emily's smile was cold. Oh, he didn't tell you? Carter has a habit of cheating. You're not special, Kelly. Just the latest in a line of women he's used. The room erupted in chaos then. Kelly lunged at Carter, her composure finally breaking. You said I was the only one. You said you'd never stop loving me. My father stood, pulling me aside as Kelly's bridesmaids tried to restrain her. Son, maybe we should take this somewhere private. But I shook my head. No, Dad. This needed to happen in the open. All of it. Are you okay? He asked, his eyes searching mine. I will be, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Better to know now than a year into a marriage. He nodded, squeezing my shoulder. You're handling this with more grace than most would. Kelly's mother was sobbing now, her face buried in her hands. Madison was trying to comfort her while shooting daggers at Carter with her eyes. The rest of the guests were a mixture of horrified and fascinated, as if watching a particularly gripping reality show. In the midst of the chaos, I felt a strange calm descend over me. The worst had happened, the truth was out, and somehow I was still standing. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket and placed it on the table. That's a check covering my half of the wedding expenses. The venue's been paid through next Saturday. Do with it what you will. Kelly broke away from her bridesmaids, rushing toward me. Lucas, don't do this. Don't throw away what we have over one mistake. One mistake, I echoed. This wasn't leaving the cap off the toothpaste, Kelly. This was a deliberate series of choices you made over months to betray my trust, to betray us. I'll end it with Carter, I swear. We can postpone the wedding, go to counseling, whatever you need. Her makeup was streaked with tears, her eyes wild with desperation. For a moment I wavered. I did love her. Despite everything, part of me still wanted to believe we could move past this, rebuild what we'd lost. But then I caught Emily's eye across the room, saw the strength there, the refusal to accept less than she deserved, and I found my resolve. No, I said, my voice soft but firm. I deserve better than to be someone's second choice, their backup plan. We both do. I nodded toward Emily. Good luck, Kelly. I hope you find what you're looking for. I turned to leave, Emily falling into step beside me. Behind us, Kelly's wails rose above the commotion, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I saw her tears, her pain, I might weaken, might let myself believe her promises of change. Outside, the Seattle night air was cool and damp, a fine mist falling softly around us. Emily and I stood under the restaurant awning, the sounds of continued chaos muffled behind the heavy doors. Well, she said after a moment, that went about as well as could be expected. I couldn't help it, I laughed, a short surprise sound that seemed to startle both of us. I suppose it did, she smiled, small but genuine. What now? Now? I looked out at the rain-slicked streets, the glittering lights of the city I'd called home for a decade. Now I think I need a drink, a real one, not the watered-down cocktails they were serving in there. I know a place, she said, if you're interested in company. I considered her offer. An hour ago, we'd been strangers united by betrayal. Now we were, what? Accomplices? Friends? Something else entirely? Lead the way, I said finally. The bar she took me to was a small, dimly lit place in Belltown, with worn leather booths and a jazz quartet playing in the corner. The music was soulful and melancholy, the perfect soundtrack for the evening. We settled into a booth, ordered whiskeys, and sat in companionable silence, letting the music wash over us. Do you regret it? I asked eventually. The way we did it? In front of everyone? Emily considered the question, swirling her whiskey thoughtfully. No, she said after a moment. Maybe I should. It was messy and public and probably traumatizing for your future mother-in-law, but they didn't give us the courtesy of honesty. Why should we have protected their feelings when they didn't care about ours? I nodded, understanding her sentiment, even as a part of me questioned the spectacle we'd created. What will you do now? File for divorce, obviously. It's not our first rodeo, so I know the drill. Fortunately, we have a prenup this time. Fool me once, right? She took a sip of her whiskey. After that, I don't know. Move, maybe. Start fresh somewhere new. San Diego's always appealed to me. Sounds nice, I said, imagining warm beaches and constant sunshine. So different from Seattle's perpetual gray. What about you? She asked. I hadn't thought that far ahead. My focus had been so singularly on exposing the truth that I hadn't planned for the aftermath. I guess I'll start by canceling a honeymoon to Bali. After that, I'm not sure. Well, you're an architect, right? You can build something new, something better. She raised her glass. To new foundations. I clinked my glass against hers. To new foundations. We stayed there until closing, talking about everything and nothing. Her childhood in Boston, my college years in Chicago, her work at the hospital, my latest building projects. It was strangely easy, this connection born of shared pain. By the time we parted ways outside the bar, exchanging numbers with promises to check in on each other, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The aftermath was exactly as messy as you'd expect. Kelly moved out of our condo the next day, taking only her clothes and personal items. She left her key on the kitchen counter alongside her engagement ring and a tear-stained note I didn't read. I heard through mutual friends that she'd quit her job at the design firm and moved back in with her parents. Carter apparently had returned to Emily, begging forgiveness, promising changes. She'd changed the locks. 2 weeks after the rehearsal dinner disaster, I received a text from Madison. Thought you should know. Carter's back with Emily. They're in your couples therapy again. Kay's completely devastated. I stared at the message, waiting to feel something. Triumph, vindication, regret. Instead, I felt only a detached sort of pity. Kelly had gambled everything on Carter choosing her, and she'd lost. It was a harsh lesson, but one she'd brought on herself. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of grief and liberation. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that demanded long hours and complete focus. In the evenings, I started renovating the condo, replacing the furniture Kelly had chosen, repainting the walls, making the space my own again, or trying to. But everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts of our life together. The dent in the wall from when we tried to move the couch ourselves. The scorch mark on the counter from a cooking experiment gone wrong. The view of the Space Needle she'd loved so much. Eventually, I realized I couldn't stay. The condo, beautiful as it was, had become a mausoleum for a relationship that had died. I sold the condo a month later, unwilling to live surrounded by memories and plans that would never materialize. I used part of the proceeds to put a down payment on a small house in Fremont, with a workshop in the backyard where I could pursue my passion for handcrafted furniture, something I'd neglected during my relationship with Kelly. The house needed work. The kitchen was outdated, the floors creaked, the backyard was overgrown, but that was part of its appeal. Every hour I spent sanding floors or replacing cabinets was an hour I wasn't thinking about Kelly, about the wedding that never happened, about the life I thought I'd have. Emily and I kept in touch. Coffee every few weeks turned into dinner occasionally, then movies, then weekend hikes. We were careful, both still raw from our experiences, both wary of repeating past mistakes. But there was something undeniable between us, a connection forged in the fire of shared betrayal, tempered by mutual respect and genuine enjoyment of each other's company. I like that we're taking it slow, she said one evening, as we walked along Alki Beach, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and pink. After everything, it's nice to just be. I nodded, understanding completely. No pressure, no expectations, Just two people figuring out who they are without the people they thought they'd spend their lives with. Exactly. She smiled, bumping her shoulder against mine. Although, for what it's worth, I like who you are. I like who you are too, I said, surprised by how true it was. Meanwhile, Kelly's life had taken a drastically different turn. After Carter chose Emily, she spiraled. The rejection was devastating, compounded by the public humiliation of the rehearsal dinner scene. Madison told me that Kelly had been let go from her job. Apparently, the firm's biggest client had been at our rehearsal dinner, a friend of my father's who'd been considering her for a major hotel redesign. After witnessing her breakdown, he'd pulled the project, and the firm couldn't justify keeping her. She tried to reach out to Carter several times, according to mutual friends, but he'd blocked her number after Emily threatened to leave for good if he had any contact with Kelly. Her parents, strict Episcopalians who'd raised her with traditional values, were deeply ashamed of her behavior. They let her stay with them, but made no secret of their disappointment. "They're barely speaking to her," Madison said when I ran into her at a coffee shop one day. "Her mom told my mom that they can't show their faces at church anymore. Everyone knows what happened." "That seems harsh," I said, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy despite everything. Madison shrugged. "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Kelly knew what she was doing. She just didn't think she'd get caught." The conversation left me unsettled. I'd wanted truth, not destruction. But perhaps they were two sides of the same coin. The truth had freed me, but it had shattered Kelly's world in ways I hadn't anticipated. One rainy evening, about a month before my move to Denver, I ran into Kelly's college roommate, Stephanie, at a local coffee shop. "Lucas," she said, her expression guarded. "How are you?" "I'm good," I replied, surprised by the truth in that statement. "Really good, actually. How are you? How's—" I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to know, but curiosity won out. "How's Kelly?" Stephanie's face fell. "Not great. She's struggling. After everything with Carter, and then losing her job, most of her friends kind of distanced themselves. No one wanted to be associated with the scandal. You know how Seattle is. Everyone knows everyone in design circles." A twinge of guilt hit me, even though I knew I wasn't responsible for Kelly's choices. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be," Stephanie said, an edge to her voice. "She made her bed, but it's hard to watch." She hesitated, then added, "She asks about you sometimes. I think she regrets everything, not just Carter, but how she treated you." I nodded, not knowing what to say to that. "I hope she finds her way." "Me too," Stephanie said, "but right now she's just lost. Her parents are pushing her to move back to their small town, start over where people don't know her story. But Kelly always said that would be like dying. Seattle was her dream." I paid for my coffee and Stephanie's, wished her well and left, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. I didn't wish suffering on Kelly, despite what she'd done, but I also couldn't deny a certain sense of cosmic justice in the way things had played out. She'd risked everything on a man who'd already proven himself untrustworthy, and she'd lost everything as a result. 6 months after what we came to call the Silver Oak Showdown, Emily was offered a position at a prestigious hospital in Denver. She asked me to help her look for apartments online, knowing my eye for good design. As we scrolled through listings one evening, my laptop between us on my couch, she turned to me with an unexpected question. "What would you think about coming with me to Denver?" I looked up, surprised. "What?" "I know it's crazy," she said quickly. "We're not even officially dating. You have your firm here, your new house, but I like having you in my life, Lucas, and I think you like having me in yours. Denver has architecture firms, good ones, and mountains. You love mountains." I did love mountains. I realized with sudden clarity, loved the way Emily's eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way she always ordered dessert but insisted on sharing it, the way she could sit in comfortable silence with me for hours while we both read separate books. "Are you asking me to move to Denver with you, Emily Daniels?" I asked, a slow smile spreading across my face. "I guess I am," she said, her cheeks flushing. "Not to move in together or anything. Just to be in the same city, to see where this goes without having to say goodbye." I closed the laptop, setting it aside to take her hands in mine. "What if I said yes?" What would that mean for us? It would mean we're choosing each other, she said simply. Choosing to build something new. Together. No guarantees, no pressure. Just intention. I thought about Kelly, about the life I'd thought I wanted, about the pain that had led me here, to this moment with this woman who'd walked through fire with me and emerged stronger on the other side. Denver has good whiskey, I hear, I said finally. Her smile was like sunrise. The best. 2 weeks later, I put my house on the market, gave notice at my firm, and began packing for a new life in Colorado. Not running away from my past, but moving toward a future I hadn't expected, but now couldn't imagine any other way. A week before my move to Denver, I was having dinner with my parents when my mother brought up Kelly. I saw her today, she said softly, at the market. She looks different, smaller somehow. My father grunted. Actions have consequences. She made her choice. Still, my mother said, it's sad. I heard she's working as a barista now. Such a waste of talent. I pushed my food around my plate, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Mom, I appreciate your compassion, but I'd rather not discuss Kelly. Of course, honey, she said, patting my hand. I just wanted you to know. I saw her wearing her old wedding dress yesterday, the one she was going to wear with Carter before he left her for Emily. She was sitting alone at that restaurant where you had your rehearsal dinner drinking wine. The waitstaff seemed to know her, like she does this regularly. It's concerning. That's not my problem anymore, I said firmly, even as a chill ran down my spine at the image. Kelly, alone in her wedding dress, drinking at the scene of her humiliation. It was a disturbing picture, one that spoke to a deeper, unraveling than I'd realized. I know that, my mother said, and I'm proud of you for moving on, for building something new with Emily. You deserve happiness, Lucas. I just thought you should know. The night before I left Seattle, I found myself driving past Silver Oak, drawn by some morbid curiosity I couldn't explain. It was raining, as it always seemed to be in this city, and through the restaurant's windows, I could see diners enjoying their meals, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded there months earlier. And then I saw her. Kelly was sitting alone at the bar, wearing a white dress that could have been a wedding gown, her once vibrant blonde hair limp and dull. She was staring into a glass of red wine, occasionally touching the rim as if it contained some answer she couldn't quite grasp. I should have driven away. There was nothing to be gained from watching her pain, no matter how self-inflicted it might be. But something kept me there, parked across the street, watching this woman I'd once loved enough to propose to, now reduced to a ghost of herself. As I watched, she pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then held it up, as if taking a selfie with her wine glass. A moment later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Curious, I checked it. It was an Instagram post from Kelly, who I'd unfollowed but never blocked. A photo of her wine glass, the restaurant visible in the background. The caption read simply, "The Night of Truth." I put my phone away, started my car, and drove home. The next morning, I left for Denver without looking back. Emily met me at the airport, her smile brighter than the Colorado sun. As we drove to my new apartment, 5 blocks from hers as agreed, I felt the weight of Seattle falling away with each mile. This was a new beginning, one I hadn't planned, but now embraced wholeheartedly. Happy? Emily asked as we unloaded my suitcases. Getting there, I said honestly. You? She smiled, reaching for my hand. Same. It wasn't the future I'd imagined a year ago. It was better, more authentic, built on a foundation of truth rather than deception. Whatever came next, whether Emily and I lasted or not, I knew I'd made the right choice in walking away from a relationship built on lies, in refusing to accept less than I deserved. Somewhere back in Seattle, Kelly was sitting in a restaurant in a wedding dress, drinking alone, mourning what she'd lost. It was a tragic image, one that might haunt me for a while. But her story wasn't mine to fix, her pain not mine to heal. She'd have to find her own way forward, just as I had found mine. As Emily and I carried my boxes into my new apartment, laughing about the cross-country drive she'd insisted on making to bring my favorite chair, because no one should start over without at least one thing that feels like home, I caught her looking at me with an expression of cautious hope. What? I asked. Nothing, she said, smiling. I'm glad you're here. Me, too, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Outside, the Denver sun shone bright on the mountains, promising new adventures, new challenges, new joys. The rain of Seattle and all it represented was behind me now. Ahead lay only possibility, and I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. 3 months after moving to Denver, I received an unexpected email. It was from Madison, with the subject line, "Thought you should know." I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I wanted to revisit the past. But curiosity won out. "Lucas, I'm not sure if you keep up with Seattle news, but there was an incident at Silver Oak last night. Kelly showed up in her wedding dress again, but this time she caused a scene. She was screaming at the bartender, something about Carter and broken promises. They had to call the police. It's all over social media. Her parents have checked her into some kind of treatment facility. I thought you should know. I also wanted to say that I hope you're doing well in Denver. You deserved better than what happened, and I'm sorry I didn't see what was going on sooner. Maybe I could have warned you. Take care, Madison." I stared at the email, a mixture of emotions washing over me. Sadness for what Kelly had become, relief that I'd escaped when I did, a touch of guilt, wondering if our public confrontation had pushed her over some edge. But mostly I felt a profound sense of distance, as if I was reading about a stranger. I closed the email without replying and looked out my window at the mountains in the distance. Denver had been good for me, a fresh start in every way. I'd found work with a sustainable architecture firm that valued my ideas. I'd made new friends, people who knew me only as I was now, not as half of Lucas and Kelly, and Emily. Emily had become the center of my new life in a way I hadn't expected. What had started as a cautious friendship had deepened into something profound. We still maintained separate apartments, but most nights we were together, either at her place or mine. We cooked together, hiked together, built a life together, piece by careful piece. That evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I told her about Madison's email. "That's awful," she said, her face softening with genuine sympathy. "Mental health struggles are no joke." "No, they're not," I agreed. "I hope she gets the help she needs." "And you?" Emily asked, studying my face. "How do you feel about it?" I considered the question seriously. Sad, I guess. Sad that it came to this. Sad that she couldn't see what she had before she threw it away. But also disconnected. Like it's happening to people I used to know, in a life I used to live. She nodded, understanding. "That makes sense. You've built something new here. We both have." I took her hand, entwining our fingers. "Something better." She leaned against me, her warmth a comfort in the cooling evening air. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found out? If you'd married Kelly and I'd stayed with Carter?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but then I realized we would have been living lies, and eventually the truth would have come out anyway, just with more collateral damage." "You're probably right," she said. "Still, it's strange to think about how one decision, one moment, can change everything." I thought about that night at Silver Oak, about the looks on Kelly's and Carter's faces when we walked in together, about the chaos that followed, the pain, the relief, the aftermath. One night that had altered the course of 4 lives forever. "I wouldn't change it," I said finally. "Not any of it. Even the hard parts led us here." She smiled, leaning up to kiss me softly. "Me neither." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. As darkness fell, the city lights began to twinkle below us, a galaxy of earthbound stars. I thought about Kelly, alone in a treatment facility, fighting demons partly of her own making. About Carter, who might or might not have learned from his mistakes. About the lives we'd left behind in Seattle. But mostly I thought about new beginnings, about second chances, about finding love in unexpected places, with unexpected people, about building something stronger on the ruins of what came before. "To new foundations," I whispered, echoing our toast from that first night at the bar. Emily smiled, understanding the reference immediately. "To new foundations," she repeated, "and to whatever we build on them." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of a Colorado sunset, I knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not despite the pain that had brought me here, but because of it. Every choice, every mistake, every betrayal and revelation had led to this point. This woman, this life, and for that, strangely enough, I was grateful.